Welcome quilters to my stop on the Superior Sampler Benartex blog hop. This week I am sharing my tutorial for my block called Turning Point. This block is beginner friendly. We have half square triangles, which are my favorite, and flying geese units. These flying geese units are trimmed to a different size than we may be used to, so I'll be walking you through that as well as the assembly. I'm going to go over a couple of the cuts, not every fabric, just a couple of them. If you like to read through your instructions and not follow a video, I will have the link to my blog, and that has a full set of instructions there as well. The first cut I'm going to go over will be with the light teal, and I'm just going to go over quickly how we get that straight edge to make sure our cutting is accurate. So I have folded my fat quarter, and I am simply using the selvage and lining up that cut edge that we get from the fabric store and just making sure that that is parallel with the selvage. So when that is as straight as it can be, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I'm then going to go ahead and move it so that the fold is along one of the mat lines. So we know that this is going to be a straight line. And then I'm going to move this over so that we're trimming off as little as possible over here, but we do want to get a straight edge. You can see that this is not straight. We've got some craziness going on over here, so I want to trim that off, but I want to trim off as little as possible. So I've got that moved over. I've got my fold on this line on the mat, so I know that this cut is going to be perpendicular to the fold and give us that nice straight edge to start with. I am using the mat for this measurement or for this mark just because we're just using a straight edge. This is not our measurement. We're just doing a straight edge on this. So give ourselves that first cut. You can see I just cut off very, very little. So our first cut is going to be a 3-inch cut. So we're going to line up that ruler line, our 3-inch line, right on the edge of the fabric. We don't want it off the fabric. We want it right on the fabric. You may be able to see just a little bit of it. That is okay. That's just going to give us a few extra fibers to keep our accuracy nice. And we are going to be trimming these down to size, but that just gives us a little bit more to work with. That's all we need from this color. So we're going to go ahead, fold that up, set it aside. I'm going to rotate, line that straight edge that we just cut. We're going to line it up on the mat, and we need 2 3-inch squares. But first we need to give ourselves that straight edge again. So again, I'm going to use the line on my mat. Go ahead, trim that off, trimming off as little as possible. And then we're going to get those 3-inch squares, leaving this folded so we get 2. And again, lining up the line on our ruler is right on the line of our fabric. We'll set that aside. Next, we're going to mark the diagonal on these squares. To do that, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line it up just off to the side of each point. So not right on the points. We're going to be right off to the side, and that's going to give room for the width of my marking utensil so that I can come in here and mark it, and it's going to be right on the corners of that square. Again, we're just lining it up just off to the side, and I'm just using a regular mechanical pencil. That's my favorite thing to use. And drawing that line, and it's right in the middle. All right, so that is what we're doing for the light teal. The next one I'm going to go over will be the dark green, and we'll just go over quick how to cut it and how to cut on the diagonal and how to cut on the diagonal twice. Next, I'm going to go over the dark green, and we're going to do the same thing. I have lined up my selvage and my cut fabric. I've lined up my fold on the mat, and I'm going to go ahead and cut. I'm going to go ahead and cut a straight edge here. Now for this one, I'm going to just cut one 5.5 inch strip. And then we will cut our 5-inch squares from this as well. But I'm just going to cut one 5.5 inch strip. Again, lining up the line on my ruler on the fabric, along the edge, but on it. Go ahead and make that cut. Set aside the extra. We'll rotate this. We're going to trim off as little as possible. To again give ourselves that nice straight clean edge, and again just a little bit, there's not much I'm trimming off. Okay, now we're going to open this up because we only need one 5.5 inch square. So I've opened it up so that we are going to line up that 5.5 inch line on our ruler and just get one square. I'm going to set that aside for now. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold this back up. I'm not worried now if the fabric moves around on the mat. I'm not worried at this point because now I'm doing all of my cutting and all of my measuring using the ruler instead of the mat. And we're going to now cut two 5-inch squares. So to start with, I'm going to fold this in half. So now I'm going to get 2 cuts and line up that 5-inch mark. Then we'll rotate this and trim off that extra because remember we cut that at a 5.5 inch width. So we need to trim off that 1/2 inch. I'm going to keep the 5-inch part here. Okay, so this is the dark green and this is step 5. And we are going to just cut this once on the diagonal. So I'm going to go ahead, just leave it here and take my ruler, line it up right on the diagonal and make that cut. We aren't going to take those squares apart. We aren't going to move it. We're just going to get a nice cut. Now we have 4 triangles, and these are our corner triangles. Now we're going to take that 5.5 inch square, and what I want you to do now is go ahead and leave it straight on like this, and you're going to move your ruler in your body, not your square. So go ahead, leave it nice and straight. Go ahead, make your first cut diagonal. So corner to corner, we're going to line that up. Don't move the square. Simply rotate your ruler, line it up, corner to corner, and make that cut. These now are what we're going to call our setting squares. And so we will use these when we are we'll put them onto our flying geese unit. So these are called, the 5-inch square triangles are called our setting squares. So that's important when we're putting this block together. So from here on, you can go ahead, cut your fabrics. I have bolded where you are supposed to cut and where you are supposed to mark. So don't get those confused, just take your time. And then we're going to come back and we are going to start with the half square triangle units. For the half square triangle units, we are going to use our light teal and our light orange. We are going to take them to the machine, right sides together, and we're going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides of that line, and then we will come back, cut on that line, we'll press, and then we will trim. All right, we are going to go ahead, just cut on that drawn line. We'll do that for both of them, and then we are going to go ahead and press to the dark fabric. So it doesn't matter which way you're pressing right now. The only thing that I want to encourage you to remember to do is press the same way throughout your half square triangles. So if you're pressing them all to the light teal, then press all of them to the light teal. If you're pressing them all to the light orange, press all of them to the light orange. You want to press all of them the same way. And so I'm going to go ahead, press these all to the orange side. All right, now we're going to trim these. There are many rulers out there to help you trim your half square triangles. I'm going to use Creative Grids. I'm using a 6.5-inch square. You can use a 10-inch square, a 12.5-inch square. You can go ahead and use the 6.5 by 12.5 if that's what you have, or the 6.5 by 24.5-inch. Whatever ruler you have is going to work. Half square triangles, we are going to trim these to 2.5, and I have my square. We're going to use the 2.5 and that diagonal. We're going to line that diagonal up right on that seam that we have sewn. For this first cut, we want to make sure that there is fabric all the way around the outside and around the 2.5-inch mark here on our ruler, because we're going to rotate and trim. So we want the 2.5-inch square completely inside all of that fabric. So making sure that the fabric is surrounding it, then the only thing we need to do is make sure that the line, this 45-degree line on our ruler, is right on the sewn line that we have. We'll go ahead and cut. You can see we're trimming off very little. We're going to rotate that. This time, our diagonal is still on the seam, but now our 2.5-inch lines are going to be on the edge of the fabric. And I do the same thing that I do with when I'm cutting my fabric squares and strips. I'm lining up the ruler line right on the fabric. It's on the edge, but it's on the fabric. It's not off the fabric. I'm doing the same thing for the half square triangle units. You can see it's just right on it. It's not off of the fabric. We'll go ahead and trim. Again, we're not getting a lot of fabric off, and that's okay. So we have our 2.5-inch square. Now that those are trimmed, we are going to lay out our pinwheel. So follow the instructions to make sure you have them in the right order, and we're going to go ahead and lay these out. Now, you can take them to the sewing machine just like this if you want. However, you can also take both of them, take this row and flip it, because it's going to be exactly the same. So we're going to take it to the machine and sew these together. Now when you flip it, because you pressed your seams the same way, these are going to nest really nicely together, just like that. You pull them in and you can just feel them click right there, and we'll just sew along there. Now we are going to do the spin the pinwheel tip. So we have our half square triangles sewn. We have our pretty pinwheel. We are going to go ahead and take out these stitches right here. Do not take anything past this sewn seam that we've just done. That's going to keep all of this locked together and in place. We can pull these threads out, it does not matter, because we are leaving this seam in place. But all the stitches above this seam, we're going to go ahead and rip out. So we'll just carefully take these out from both sides. And once we have that, now we can open up our pinwheel. And if you note that our seams are going this way, that tells you can take these seams, push them down, and that's going to open up where you've ripped out those stitches. And now we have a nice flat seam. So we're going to take our hot iron, keep this down, watch your fingers with this hot iron, and I like to just come in from one side first, hit that there, do the same thing with this one, and then we're going to come and hit that center. And then you can kind of come and do the whole block. And now you get a pretty little pinwheel here, and when you flip that, look at how nice and flat that block is. It's really nice and pretty, and it lays really flat. Okay, we are going to be making flying geese units now. So on the table I have the first set that we have cut out, the light orange and our medium teal, and then our dark teal and our dark orange. And we're going to go ahead, I'll start with this color, and I want you to take your 4-inch squares, we're lining them up right sides together, But we're going to put them on the large square, leaving just a little bit of an edge from our outside large square. So you can see it all the way around. You might be able to see it a little bit better with the dark. We're just going to go ahead and line these up. So your line that you drew is going straight down here. That's our guide. So we want those lines to line up nicely with each other. But we're just going to line these up so that they have a little bit of fabric on the outside. And we will sew 1/4 of an inch on both sides of that drawn line. I'm going to go ahead and sew with the light orange and just go through the whole process with that color only. But you're going to do the same exact thing with your dark teal and your dark orange. Okay, so the next step in our flying geese unit is to cut right here on that line and then press. So I'm just going to go ahead, line up that ruler on that line and cut. So we now have these pieces with these triangles, and we're going to go ahead and press triangles up. Okay, so then our next step is to come with the last 2 4-inch squares that you've marked, and we're going to put these on our flying geese units that we have here, our almost flying geese units. They aren't quite there yet. We're going to go ahead, line these up so that now your drawn line is going right in between those 2 triangles, and we are once again going to leave a little bit of an edge. Now try to make the width that you have the outside the same as you did for the first 2 on that larger square. It just is going to help you get the top to line up a little bit more straight, but you do not want to have, you don't want to pull them out this much. Okay, we do want to keep it pretty close to where we started. There are many different specialty rulers for you to trim your flying geese units, just like there are for half square triangles. But for these flying geese units, we are trimming them to 3 3/8 by 6 1/4, which is a really odd size. So we're going to use a regular square ruler or a rectangle, whichever you have handy, and I'm going to show you how to mark it. All you need is a black Sharpie or a red, whatever Sharpie you have, it works. And we're going to mark this off. And when we're done with it, then you just take a dry erase marker, go over the Sharpie lines and over with a Kleenex, and it's all gone. All right, so our measurements. 6 1/4 by 3 3/8. So we're just going to draw that line. And the reason I'm doing this is that I want to give my eyes a place to rest. Let me grab my board just so you can maybe see the lines a little better. Because we have all of these lines and we have this 3 1/4 inch mark that's in white, that can really make our eye go there instead of that 3 3/8 inch mark that we want. And then we're trimming our geese to the wrong size, and that is just no good for anybody. So we've drawn those lines 6 1/4 by 3 3/8, and now our eyes know where we need to go. We don't have to count those little hash marks or anything like that. We're all set to go. The next important mark is your halfway mark. That's where your point needs to be so that we don't shift our flying goose unit and now it isn't centered. That mark is going to be at the 3 1/8. You're just going to hit that mark with your black Sharpie, and that's just going to, again, give you a place to start when you are trimming these, and you don't have to worry about finding that mark and knowing that you are centered. Okay, to start with, we are going to line up that middle mark with the point of our flying goose unit. And then we're going to take that 1/4 inch mark on our ruler. We're going to move it above that point so that we are not stitching that point out and losing that point. We all hate to lose the point of our flying goose. So now, because we have that 1/4 inch mark above that point, we know we're not going to lose it. Our next thing we want to check is that our lines come right where our sewn seams are. We don't want it off to the side here. We're not going all the way to the edge. We don't want it off to the edge over here. We want it lined up with those sewn seams. So again, making sure that our middle is lined up with our point, and that our 1/4 inch seam is above the point, and then that our seam allowance here, or our seams, are lining up right with those edges of our rectangle. Now we're going to make that first trim. And brush it away. Now we're going to rotate. This time we're going to match up the lines on the edge of our flying goose unit. And again, I do this the same way that I do the cutting of the fabric and the trimming of the half square triangles. We're going to line that line up right on the fabric, along the edge, but on the fabric. Then we are also going to make sure that our 3 1/8 inch mark right there is centered. We can also use this diagonal line now on our flying goose unit to see that that seam is nice and straight. We're going to now check that the end of our ruler, where we have our edge, is now lined up on that seam, and now we know that that is also going to trim correctly. So again, the line is on the edge of our fabric now. There should be nothing around it. And our middle is right where the point is. We've got that diagonal line, and our corners are right on the edge of our seam allowance, and we will trim. Whoops, and then it slid. So we just realign again. Don't let it slip and then just trim it anyway. Realign it and make sure we're okay. Okay. And now we have our flying goose units. Our next step is to add the setting triangles to the flying geese units that use the dark teal and the dark orange. Now this step is important that you have the flying geese units pointing the right way, and that your triangles, your setting triangles, are also the right way. Now your setting triangles are the triangles that we cut from the 5 1/2 inch square that we cut twice on the diagonal. So here we have our flying geese units. We want them so that our geese are flying away from us. And our setting triangles we want turned so the 90-degree angle is next to the flying goose unit. As you can see, there is a lot of extra here, and that's okay. We're not trimming that off or anything. That's going to be sewn in when we put our corner triangles on as well, so don't do anything with that extra fabric. I wanted to sew this unit with you. We have our setting triangles and our flying goose unit, and we want our 90-degree angle with our flying goose unit. And I'm going to just flip it over, and then I'm going to sew, and I'm going to start with this seam at the top. So what happens is I flip my flying goose unit over, say that 3 times fast. I'm going to flip that over so that this seam is up on top, and it's the first thing to be pulled through. And we're going to go ahead and sew that. And then that way, because these triangles are a little bit bigger, we don't have to worry about trying to find that 1/4 inch seam with this triangle, because that triangle is a little bit, that dog ear is going to sit a little bit higher. We're not going to hit that 1/4 inch, and that's okay, because we're going to put that triangle, the corner triangle on. So it's okay that that's a little bit bigger, but we don't want to have to try and sew this way and try and find that 1/4 inch and extra sewing. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to turn it so that the seam is the one that is up at top. That's what I'm starting with. Now it's going to be different because now the seam is underneath and the setting triangle is on top. But that again is just so this thicker seam is up here and this triangle or this point is here, and I don't have to worry about finding that 1/4 inch mark or seam when I have such a large dog ear that is coming over that flying goose unit. So just a quick look at the units. The pressing instructions have you pressing towards the flying goose units, so it will get a little funky down here where there's a little more fabric, but it makes more sense to do it this way. when we're doing the next step and we have that pinwheel that we are working with. So trust me, follow the pressing instructions and press towards those flying goose units. Okay, so just really quick, I want to show you these triangles again so that you can see they do hang out quite a bit. We don't have that 1/4 inch that I talked about. You can see that our stitching ends over here instead of here, but that is okay. Don't do anything to these triangles. We'll deal with them when we are done with the block. Before we finish this block and before I press it, I do want to quick take a look at the triangles. If you are a new quilter, one of the things that you can do with these triangles, with these corner triangles, is to find the center and then line these up. So fold up your long edge of your triangle, find the center, and then line that center up with your flying goose unit and stick a pin in it. And that will help you get your 1/4 inch on both sides here, because we do get a 1/4 inch seam allowance with those corner blocks. So you can find the center and pin. I did just eyeball it, but again, for more accuracy's sake, and if you are new to quilting and you're learning, I should have had you do that. So find that center by folding it and finger press, match that up to the flying goose unit point, and then stick a pin in it, and then go ahead and sew. And that is the turning point block. Thank you so much for stitching along with me. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you have been following along with the Superior Sampler blog hop with Benartex. If not, I will have a link to all of the prior, and there will be more coming as well. Go make something you love.